The desert wind rolled across the dying light of the evening sun as the tall, dust-coated cowboy named Cole Hartley rode slowly along the canyon's edge, unaware that destiny was waiting for him just beyond the bend, where the shadows clung to the rocks like silent ghosts. And it was there, under a cluster of thorn brush, that he heard a faint, trembling breath that did not belong to the wind. Instinct pulled him from his horse, boots sinking into the sand as he followed the fragile sound until he found her, an Apache woman barely conscious, her skin pale beneath the marks of a violent struggle, her wrists bruised from ropes, and her eyes flickering open as though fighting the darkness itself. And Cole, with that calm strength carved by the West, knelt beside her and whispered, "You're safe now," before lifting her gently into his arms with a care that surprised even him. For something about her presence felt ancient and powerful, like the desert itself had handed her into his hands as he carried her to his horse. She tried to speak, but her voice broke, only a hoarse whisper escaping. Yet her eyes, dark, steady, brave, said everything. And when he placed her before him in the saddle and rode toward the safety of his cabin hidden deep within the juniper hills, he felt a strange pull in his chest, a sense that this rescue was not an accident, but the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could understand. By the time he reached his cabin, the stars had risen like watchful guardians over the silent land, and Cole laid her on his bed, covering her with a wool blanket, heating water and tending to her wounds, with the same quiet dedication he used when mending a frightened horse. And slowly she began to breathe easier, her strength returning in delicate waves, until at last, just before dawn, she opened her eyes fully, steady and aware, her voice soft but clear as she said, "My name is Ayana, and I owe you my life." But Cole only nodded gently, saying, "Ayana is a strong name. You would have survived even without me," though he knew deep inside that was not fully true. For days she rested, healing under his watch. And during those days, something unspoken grew between them, something warm, steady, filled with gratitude, courage, and a deep, quiet understanding that only two souls, shaped by hardship, could share. She told him little by little how she had been taken by outlaws, while protecting her younger sister, how she escaped only to collapse from exhaustion, and each word she spoke held the weight of someone who carried storms in her heart, yet stood unbroken. Cole listened with the patience of a man who understood pain deeply, but rarely spoke of his own. And the more they talked, the more he found himself wanting to protect her, not because she was fragile, but because she was strong in a way that moved him deeply. One evening, as the sun melted into gold behind the ridges and a calm silence wrapped the cabin, Ayana stepped outside where Cole was repairing the fence and stood quietly beside him, watching him work, her long, dark hair lifted gently by the wind. And after a moment she said softly but firmly, "You saved me, but maybe you don't know what that means." And when Cole looked up, confused, she held his gaze with a strength that made his heart slow, and she stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence, and she said the words that would forever echo through his life. "You need a woman like me, Cole Hartley, because I see the things you hide from the world." For a moment he couldn't speak, the world shrinking to the sound of her breath and the truth in her eyes. She continued, voice steady, "You carry storms inside you too, but you walk through them alone. You shouldn't." Her words touched parts of him he had buried long ago, years of loneliness, scars he never spoke of, nights spent staring into firelight, wishing for something he thought he didn't deserve. She wasn't offering weakness, dependence, or rescue. She was offering partnership. Strength beside strength, courage beside courage, the kind of bond that only two warriors of life could share. Cole felt a tremor in his chest, not of fear but of awakening, and in that sacred, quiet instant of the desert evening, he realized that this woman, this brave, unbroken Apache woman, had not only survived, but seen straight into the core of him. Gently, he set his tools aside and stepped closer, lifting her chin with a touch as soft as sunrise. and he whispered with a roughness shaped by emotion, "Ayana, maybe you're right," and she smiled, not a fragile smile, but one filled with quiet triumph and hope, and she laid her hand over his heart as though sealing a promise written by fate itself. The desert wind shifted around them, carrying the scent of sage and the distant song of night birds, and in that moment, with the canyons stretching far and wide around them, their two worlds, Apache and Cowboy, met not in conflict but in harmony, woven by survival, gratitude, courage, and something deeper blooming like firelight in the dark. And as night settled softly over the land, Cole knew without a doubt that his life had changed forever, because some women do not come into a man's life to be saved. They come to stand beside him, to be his equal, to be his strength, and to remind him gently but fearlessly, "You need a woman like me."